Dramatic. Anti-Semitic. No, that's not Semitic. Anti-Semitic. That's not Semitic. Anti-Semitic. And I'm Semitic too. Anti-Semitic. No, that's not Semitic. Anti-Semitic. No, that's not Semitic. Anti-Semitic. No, that's not Semitic. Anti-Semitic. I'm Semitic too. Anti-Semitic. No, that's not Semitic. Anti-Semitic. No, that's not Semitic. Anti-Semitic. No, that's not Semitic. Anti-Semitic. I'm Semitic too.
Now, there's a range of practice even among Black Hebrew Israelites. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a large community of them in Israel who identify as Jewish in a traditional way. And then you have the guys in Times Square who observe in a way that's not so traditional, I would say.
They would say y'all aren't Jews. They would say that, what they say, white people are not the original Jews, basically.
Correct. Yeah. And look, they're entitled to their beliefs until that justifies shooting Jewish people with pellet guns on Staten Island. Or like, this is December. 3 years ago, December 2019, 2 Black Hebrew Israelites went into a kosher supermarket in Jersey City and killed 3 people because they said they weren't real Jews.
Wow.
Shot them cold dead in a kosher supermarket. So again, you're entitled to believe whatever you want, but I think we need to recognize that rhetoric can have real world consequences.
As I said yesterday, we are committed to providing the public with information that is properly vetted and thoroughly accurate. We will get you that information as quickly as we can, but we think it's more important to be right than to be fast. As the state's chief law enforcement officer, and all of us as prosecutors, as investigators, we simply don't have the luxury to jump to conclusions. There has been considerable reporting that these 2 suspects are linked to the Black Hebrew Israelite movement. We have evidence that both suspects expressed interest in this group, but we have not definitively established any formal links to that organization or to any other group. Based on the available evidence, we believe that the 2 shooters were acting on their own.
Acting on their own. Then that would mean that the perpetrators were not Hebrew Israelites. Then why would the president of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt, openly slander the African Israelite community? Is he a liar?
Well, what do I do? So the Anti-Defamation League, let's just step back. Mm-hmm. It's the oldest anti-hate organization in the United States. It was founded in 1913 after a Jewish man was lynched. He'd been falsely accused of a crime, wrongly convicted, and ultimately the mob tore him from his jail and they hung him from a tree.
Well, that's not true. You see, when the ADL was founded in 1913, the Ashkenazi Jewish man, Leo Frank, wasn't lynched yet. In fact, he wasn't lynched until 2 years later on August 17th, 1915. So why would Jonathan Greenblatt lie about the reason the ADL was founded? This is something that every single Black person needs to know. You need to know why the ADL was founded and when. You see, it was founded less than 1 month after the racist Ashkenazi Jew Leo Frank and his racist defense team made the following statement about Negroes.
The thing that arises in this case to fatigue my indignation is that men born of such parents should believe the statement of Conley against the statement of Frank. Who is Conley? Who was Conley as he used to be? And as you have seen him, he was a dirty, filthy, black, drunken, lying Niger. Black knows it. Starnes knows that. Chief Beavers knows it. Who was it that made this dirty Niger come up here looking so slick? Why didn't they let you see him as he was? They shaved him, washed him, and dressed him up. I was raised with Nigers and know something about them. I don't know them as well as the police, perhaps, for they know them like no one else. But I know something about them. There must have been a Niger in the crime who knew about it before Newt or anyone else. I'm afraid Newt knew. Yet, if he did, he was one of the most remarkable Nigers I ever saw, and I wish I had his nerve. There were things you detectives did to him for which you will never be forgiven. You persecuted the old Niger, and all you got was, "For God, I don't know." I don't believe he killed him, but I believe he knows more than he told.
You see, this marked the birth of the ADL. Shortly after Leo Frank was convicted by unanimous decision, August 25th, 1913, the ADL was formed by Leo Frank's B'nai B'rith organization the following month in September. By B'nai B'rith, Leo Frank's organization. This marked the beginning of the ADL and the beginning of one of the most violent stretches of history for the so-called Negro outside of slavery. And the question everyone should ask is why?
And the next upstream frontier is engaging businesses, making sure they don't back anti-Semites just to chase a buck. And the next upstream frontier is engaging businesses, making sure they don't back anti-Semites just to chase a buck. Making sure they don't back anti-Semites just to chase a buck. Just to chase a buck, just to chase a buck, just to chase a buck.
Just like Louis B. Mayer made a buck off the racist film Birth of a Nation,
just to chase a buck,
which was credited with the revitalization of the Ku Klux Klan,
just to chase a buck,
who then directly massacred hundreds of Negroes across the country.
Just to chase a buck.
Or just like Al Jolson, who made a buck from donning the racist blackface,
just to chase a buck, just to chase a buck,
perpetuating racist tropes against the Negro community. These bucks, drenched in hate, were then donated to the ADL. As the following reference reads, it reads, the primary source of funding for the ADL in Southern California, the equivalent in today's dollars of $500,000 a year, came from movie moguls like Louis B. Mayer and Irving Thalberg of MGM Studios. You see, the ADL gets its bucks from the very same MGM Studios who helped distribute the racist film Birth of a Nation, as well as other racist blackface films.
Just to chase a buck, just to chase a buck.
1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7 reads, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. Verse 9, but they that will be rich,
just to chase a buck,
fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil.
just to chase a buck, just to chase a buck.
Which while some coveteth after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many arrows.
Just to chase a buck.
I wonder if Adidas knew of the ADL's questionable connections.
Just to chase a buck, just to chase a buck. But Adidas was silent. So I called the chairman of Adidas, and he gave me a list of reasons as to why he couldn't act. Now look, I've worked at some big companies. I get the politics and I understand the pressure. So I told him, hey, we will work with you and we will praise you if and when you do the right thing. But until you do, ADL will hammer you as hard as we can. And then Adidas took notice. Instead of just keeping their relationship with Kanye West under review, they put it on ice and terminated it. And look, while I wish they had done it sooner, Adidas, to their credit, made it abundantly clear that they would not do business with bigots. And today I am so pleased that they're here at Never Is Now to announce an incredible commitment that demonstrates their dedication to fighting anti-Semitism, to addressing hate, will last long beyond this moment.
And so, the ADL forced Adidas to terminate its contract with Kanye West, with little consideration to who else got hurt along the way. The part Jonathan Greenblatt in the ADL leaves out is the fact that by forcing Adidas to separate from Kanye, they also forced Adidas to lay off 142 employees.
For over a century, the Anti-Defamation League has cultivated its reputation as the premier organization dealing with matters of anti-Semitism and is almost always brought in to judge its alleged incidents. In one analysis, researchers found that the ADL was mentioned in 2/3 of 46,000 articles mentioning white nationalism from 2018 to 2019. Despite the ADL's reputation in the media as an infallible anti-racist organization, the ADL has long been accused of selectively deploying accusations of anti-Semitism and being purveyors of anti-Black and anti-Palestinian racism themselves. One of the biggest issues in the ADL's eyes was that certain unnamed marginalized groups have allegedly become the biggest purveyors of anti-Semitism.
Certain marginalized groups seem to be some of the biggest offenders of anti-Semitism. People don't want to talk about that.
And what's really sad is that so many other minority groups have joined this bandwagon, that a lot of the national anti-Israel organizations have made it their cause for the last 20 years to equate the Palestinian problem with the problems of racism in this country. It is not a racial conflict. And those kinds of equations are just stupid.
Right.
And they don't belong on campus.
The implication that Black people are somehow the face of anti-Semitism has been a consistent theme throughout the history of the ADL. In 2019, the ADL smeared Ilhan Omar as an anti-Semite for tweeting out that the American Israel Political Affairs Committee donating to politicians might have an impact on their positions on Israel. In 2018, the ADL led a campaign against then CNN commentator Mark Lamont Hill for saying, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," which the ADL said was a coded message that secretly meant that Hill wanted to destroy the state of Israel. The ADL campaign got Hill fired from CNN. Going back to the 1980s, the ADL blocked anti-racist school curricula prepared by the National Anti-Klan Network because they deemed it too radical. And in 1967, the ADL compared the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to a black version of the KKK because of its support for Palestine. To this day, the ADL still conditions its support for black liberation movements on whether or not they support Israel. In 2016, the ADL denounced the Black Lives Matter movement after BLM released a policy platform criticizing criticizing Israel. Despite releasing multiple statements condemning the murder of George Floyd, the ADL will never tell you that they're one of the largest non-governmental sponsors of police exchanges between the United States and Israel, where repressive policing tactics are exchanged. So it really comes as no surprise that there's been a historically instinctive solidarity between anti-racist and Palestinian protesters facing off against tear gas and repression. Historically, white Europeans have always been the main purveyors of anti-Semitism, not black people. But for an organization hell-bent on blurring the connection between the Palestinian struggle and the struggle of other oppressed nationalities, the long history of black Palestinian solidarity constitutes a tremendous threat. This strong support for Palestine among oppressed nationalities is also why there's so many white nationalists who, despite their vicious anti-Semitism, support Israel. Richard Spencer, who famously sig-heiled Trump's 2016 presidential victory, is actually an outspoken supporter of Israel. Why? Because, in his own words, Israel resembles the type of white-only ethno-state he wants to create in the US. Israel is a two-tiered legal system, one set of rule for Jews and another for Arabs. Israel has Jewish-only roads and Jewish-only schools. Jews have one type of ID while Arabs have another. Israelis are free to travel anywhere in Palestine, whereas Arabs are forced to apply for travel permits and endure brutal and humiliating checkpoints. The legal system also fosters a deeply racist mentality towards Arabs. Polls show that about half of Israeli high schoolers don't think Arabs should have the right to vote. Another poll showed that almost half of Israeli Jews don't want Arabs teaching their kids. It's basically an Israeli version of Jim Crow. After publishing a video titled 10 Reasons I Hate the Jews, Gavin McInnes, founder of the Proud Boys, declared that he likes Israel as, quote, more than a friend, and that they should stop apologizing for everything, like their immigration policy. Israel's immigration policy towards non-Jews is incredibly harsh, especially towards Africans. In 2015, Israel passed a law that would require non-Jewish African migrants to either leave Israel or go to prison. And Israeli politicians often liken African migrants to a cancer on Israeli society. Israel was one of the few countries in the world to recognize the legitimacy of apartheid South Africa. Initially, Israel was hostile towards South Africa because so many leading figures in the South African government supported the Nazis. But it eventually got over it as Israel realized that it had far more in common with South Africa as a fellow apartheid state than they had differences. The two countries signed a secret agreement in 1975 to exchange weapons when both countries were under international arms embargoes for their violations of international law. While Israel went to great lengths to try to cover up this relationship, recently uncovered documents indicate that Israel offered to sell apartheid South Africa nuclear weapons. Israel also played a major role in arming Rhodesia, the name of a British settler colony and apartheid state that occupied present-day Zimbabwe. While Israel publicly condemned Rhodesia, privately, Israel was pouring weapons into Rhodesia in a desperate attempt to prop up the apartheid regime, which, like South Africa, couldn't buy weapons due to international sanctions. Israel gave Rhodesia the license to manufacture the infamous Israeli Uzi submachine gun, which Rhodesians renamed the Ruzi, and exclusively sold it to its white citizens. Israel also used private companies to hide sales of Bell 205 helicopters to Rhodesia, using apartheid South Africa as a supply route. These helicopters, which were being converted into gunships, were the single most important weapon in the Rhodesian government's war against African liberation fighters, and it was Israel who helped them acquire them. Today, Israel still helps give cover to white supremacists outside of its own territory. In December, Israel welcomed a delegation from the Ukrainian Azov Battalion, a special forces detachment in the Ukrainian military most known for its support for Nazism. The insignia of the Azov Battalion is the Wolfsangel, an ancient European symbol most notably appropriated by the Nazis. Several divisions of the Waffen-SS used the Wolfsangel as their logo. An earlier version of the Azov logo featured an even more overtly white supremacist symbol, the Sonnenrad, or Black Sun. The Sonnenrad was also appropriated and used by Nazis, and today is a symbol widely used by neo-Nazi groups. Peyton Gendron, the white supremacist murderer who carried out a mass shooting targeting black people in Buffalo, New York, wore this symbol in a photo he took of himself while wearing a tactical vest. The symbol also appeared on the cover of the Christchurch Shooters Manifesto, titled The Great Replacement. Ironically, both of these symbols are identified as anti-Semitic hate symbols on the ADL's website. Despite the fact that you can find dozens of images online of members of the Azov Battalion waving swastikas and throwing up the Sig Heil salute, Israeli politicians and soldiers happily met with these anti-Semites. Since the war in Ukraine began, Western governments and media outlets have been working overtime to downplay the Azov Battalion's clear ties to Nazism. Instead of condemning the Western media's attempt to whitewash the Azov Battalion, the ADL obediently followed this trend by rewriting its own understanding of the battalion. Until recently, the ADL correctly recognized Azov's far-right tendencies and wrote a report that included details of its ties to fascist groups in America. But in December, the ADL responded to a hate incident reported by the Gray Zone to the ADL, in which a member of the Azov Battalion who donned the supremacist Sonnenrad tattoo was hosted and honored at a Pentagon-funded sports competition. Instead of condemning the competition for hosting a Nazi, the ADL responded 60 days after the inquiry, saying that the Azov Battalion was actually no longer an anti-Semitic organization. Try telling that to the Azov guy with a Nazi tattoo. Anti-war activists have repeatedly warned that heavy weapons sent to Ukraine would inevitably end up in the hands of far-right groups like the Azov Battalion. In fact, there's a video of a Ukrainian neo-Nazi group, C-14, bragging about how they'd siphon off many of the weapons sent to Ukraine by Western countries.
Уявіть собі, скільки в нас зброї, скільки в нас ветеранів. А це є, вже йдеться про те, що нові політичні альянси вже глобального рівня, нові політичні виклики.
According to the ADL's own website, the Azov Battalion hosts white supremacist groups from around the world, including the United States, so they can fight in the Donbass, gain combat experience, and take it home with them. You can find tons of articles online documenting this connection, and even the US government, which has been the biggest military backer of Ukraine, was concerned about white supremacists in the US traveling to Ukraine to connect with white supremacists there. Despite all of the evidence of neo-Nazis treating Ukraine like an international training ground, the ADL invited a speaker from Ukraine to their conference to ask the attendees to pressure Washington to send even more weapons to Ukraine. You gotta ask yourself if it's actually beneficial to young Jews to scaremonger about this fake threat of Palestinians when there's very real anti-Semitism out there. But it's clear that this completely warped view of anti-Semitism is no accident. The ADL wants Jews to believe that the biggest threats to Jewish people are the ice cream boycott and the proliferation of Levantine history. Because if they actually had to criticize all anti-Semitism, white nationalism, and Nazism, they'd have to criticize Israel and all of its racist allies. The fact of the matter is, the ADL is nothing more than a well-funded PR campaign for a rogue apartheid state that's lost all international legitimacy. The increasingly desperate rhetoric coming from the ADL reflects an increasingly desperate situation for a country trying to maintain colonialism in a world that will no longer accept it.
Joining us today on Breaking Points is James Bamford, an acclaimed author, journalist, and producer known for being the premier expert on the subject of the National Security Agency and other U.S. intelligence entities. And today we are privileged to have him join us here on Breaking Points to discuss the inner workings of the Anti-Defamation League. Well, I think some people right off the bat might be wondering, civil rights group, intelligence agency, how do these two ideas connect? You wrote an article earlier this year in The Nation in which you described the ADL as a spy organization, as Israel's attack dog in the U.S., posing as a civil rights group. Unpack that for us a little bit if you can.
I've always thought the Anti-Defamation League should just drop the anti and just call them what they are. It's a defamation league. I mean, they spend all their time trying to defame people who are critical of Israel. That's pretty much what it's been since the beginning. And I was with ABC News for 10 years during the 1990s, and one of the stories I did was on the ADL. And we looked deeply into the organization and found out that it was linked to Israel, that it was spying on Americans, that it was passing information on to apartheid South Africa at the time. There was a criminal investigation launched by San Francisco's district attorney. So we spent a lot of time looking into it and talked to a number of the people who were involved. So it's not just an organization out there to protect people from slander or whatever. It's an organization out there that does a lot of slander against people, and it's never been really brought up for what it's been doing. But the investigation that was done by the San Francisco district attorney's office, among the data that came out was that they would spy on organizations that were critical of Israel, spy on organizations that were critical of South Africa, and they would pass that information on to Israel, and they passed the information on to South Africa. This was apartheid South Africa. So what they were going after were people who were going to meetings. They would infiltrate the meetings of anti-apartheid groups, anti-South African apartheid groups, pro-Palestinian groups. They would infiltrate them, gather intelligence, and then pass that intelligence on to Israel and South Africa. And at the time, South Africa, apartheid South Africa, was getting most of its weapons for use against the blacks from Israel, was getting most of its weapons for use against the blacks from Israel. Israel was the chief weapons supplier to South Africa because there was an embargo going on by the rest of the world. So Israel became the chief weapons dealer. They didn't care about, South African apartheid. They had their own apartheid. So they felt they were basically brothers in the apartheid movement. And they eventually moved from just weapons to go after the black activists in South Africa and the black population to moving towards delivering nuclear materials to South Africa. And they eventually moved from just weapons to go after the black activists in South Africa and the black population to moving towards delivering nuclear materials to South Africa. Israel already had the bomb. They had already created a nuclear weapon. And South Africa had a lot of yellow cake, basically uranium, that the Israelis needed. So it was a trade. You give us the yellow cake and we'll give you the some essential parts of the nuclear weapons. Well, the ADL relies mostly on, to some extent, they're extreme opposite. The NSA is extremely secret in everything it does, basically. The ADL is a very public organization trying to get information out there, where the NSA tries to pull it in, the ADL tries to get it out there. The similarities is in the secretive nature of collecting information, and at least on the ADL's part, on the fabrication of a lot of information that they're accusing people of being, accusing people of being anti-Semitic or whatever, just because you're against Israel. Israel is not a religion. Israel is a country. They don't allow religions into the United Nations, just countries. So if you're against Israel, you're against the country, whatever religion. There are many religions in Israel. I mean, there's Christians, Muslims, and so forth. So, and that's the problem more recently, is that the ADL has been going after protest movements, students who are protesting against Israel's genocide. I'll just read a couple quotes here. Staffers, for example, confided to a publication called Jewish Currents, and they explained why they were quitting the ADL. They accused Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the ADL, of waging war on pro-Palestinian activists. Another one said there's a lot of people of all political stripes at the ADL who believe that Jonathan is doing is reprehensible. So these are coming from the people inside the organization, a number of them who have quit because they felt the agency or the organization, the ADL, is abusing its mandate. Its mandate is to go after people who are actually committing anti-Semitism, and instead, and again, these are the people on the inside, saying it's actually going after pro-Palestinian activists and demonstrators that were taking part in a number of the university demonstrations.
Do you know if other civil rights organizations use similar tactics or methods as the ADL? Are they unique in the adoption of tactics like, this ones from intelligence agencies' playbooks, like just spying on people, defaming them? Are they unique in that sense?
As far as I'm concerned, they're unique. I've never seen any other organization come anywhere close to the ADL in terms of its secretiveness, its connections to foreign governments, and passing on information to the foreign government, and the money that it receives, the amount of attention it receives on television constantly. Jonathan Greenblatt is constantly on television. There's no other organization anywhere near that comes anywhere close to the ADL in terms of influence. Well, no organization has the right to lie or to abuse people's reputation simply because they feel it's important, or press foreign propaganda. I mean, these are all the things that manage to get them kicked off Wikipedia, which really isn't that easy to do. I mean, so if Wikipedia, and these are editors that spend all day, all their time looking at Wikipedia entries and try to decide what's true and what's not. But I'm not the first and only one to come out criticizing the ADL. There's been lots of people that have criticized it for the same reason, which is why the Wikipedia and so forth and other groups are just dissing it because it has no credibility.